All right, so yeah, that's actually semi-okay. Not terrible.
Grab that mic stuff.
Yeah, it's time to need a turn. Cool, so yeah, maybe turn the top one down just a little on the console up there. How's that? Anyone? Better? Worse? Should I just drop it? Just drop it. Let's go. Kill it.
We tried.
Yeah, we did. All right, cool. So, so leadership and engineering. A lot of times we talk about leadership, and in people's mind that means, am I in charge of someone? Am I controlling someone? Am I, am I getting people to fall in line? And it's kind of got this almost autocratic view of, I'm the boss, I'm in charge, you've got to do what I say. So one definition that you would see of leadership, and this one makes it sound pretty terrible. It's basically saying, how can I get people to do what I want through almost, subterfuge, right? So I would argue that is pretty insufficient. So leadership at its core, I guess for me, when you think about leadership in engineering, at its core there is this mantra: we don't control, we coach. Because as engineers, our scope of leadership is oftentimes the products that we work on and the team that we work on it with. So traditionally, and I've been in both types of roles. I've been on teams where to be an engineering leader meant to control. It meant backlog grooming that you would do, that a team would normally do, like the engineering leader would go through and do, and basically pre-estimate and say, here's what I think the team should say in regards to how many points this story would be, and basically do a lot of the upfront work and really not empower the team and exude the confidence in the team that being a true leader really should. So that's kind of the controlled side of things. Very prescriptive, you will use this technology, you will attack this problem in this fashion. But I would argue that's not what an engineering leader is, and I think leadership in a broader sense has evolved kind of beyond that model. And you can see that in kind of the way that we're starting to attack the healthy enterprise thing in Humana overall, moving to more of a coaching model as opposed to a control type model. And then if we look at, well, what does it take to really move from controlling to coaching? Because controlling is easy. Controlling is just saying, I want this done, I want it my way, and that's the end of that. And that's not really leadership, that's just dictation, right? That's saying what you want and expecting people to deliver, not taking them into account, and not taking into account these things. So at its core, engineers need to have a product mindset. And so what does that mean? It means that traditionally engineers, myself included, right? This is self-indicting. Traditionally, we've been focused on not the product. We've been focused on, I've been asked to do this thing, so now I'm going to go do this thing in the neatest, coolest, techiest, most efficient way possible. So I'm going to do that. Traditionally, we don't ask, does this make sense for my consumer, for the product that we've set out to build? If we've built a product that says we want to allow people to enroll in Humana Insurance, and then I get a piece of work or a story sent to me and to the rest of the team that says something that's not really related to that, then we should be saying, where does this align to the product goals that we've set forth? And in the way we do things in the deck, when we start an engagement, we have product goals defined, we have business goals defined. So every story or piece of work that we deliver should ultimately align to those product goals into those business goals. And if an engineer has a product mindset, they're bringing that set of questions to every piece of work that they take in through intake, through an iteration planning or sprint planning, and they're really just applying that every day. And that kind of goes into the second point of being consumer focused. You can have a product mindset, but there's also a separate lens you put on top of that for consumer focus. So maybe we've determined that the piece of work that we've been asked to do, meets these product and business goals. But then, how do we stay consumer focused? That is to say, is the consumer ultimately going to like this? Does it meet their needs? Does it, are we serving them the best way possible? And those are traditionally things that we've left to what we refer to as business in traditional models, or the product owner. But more and more, having that product mindset and consumer focus is something that we're all being asked to do. And just to anchor it back, those are really essential in leadership, because if a leader is focused on those things, then when he's he or she is interacting with people on their team, they're bringing that focus to their questions and questions brought to them. So, thirdly, engineering leaders have to lead by example. Traditionally, and again, self-indicting, in the model where we're being very prescriptive, we're not leading by example. We're just leading by, I want this. So, engineering leaders should really be a part of the engineering team. And that means they're doing the day-to-day work. There's not a lot of difference between how an engineering leader operates their day-to-day versus how, non-leaders in the engineering team operate on a day-to-day basis. So if we expect people to do something as an engineer, we should be modeling that behavior in all aspects. So this one gets overlooked a lot of times, written and verbal communication skills. This is important traditionally, but it becomes more and more important with the product mindset and the consumer focus. If you're intending to lead engineers and explain to them, kind of back to the coercion that we talked about in the first slide, expecting to get them to see your point of view, you need to be an excellent communicator. And when we get to this point in our lives, a lot of people are somewhat set in their communication skills, but when you really start to try to lead and force yourself to communicate, you can grow in those areas just by flexing that muscle and practicing all day. And when we look at pair programming, which is something that we do here, we're really forced to, at least from a verbal perspective, work on our communication skills consistently. Written becomes very important if you're talking, dealing with external teams, or if you're doing something like, say, issues on a GitHub repo, where that written communication is very public and kind of memorialized for all time. Also, engineering leaders really have to be assertive. They have to be sure of themselves. And being assertive is different from just saying, I know everything, because people who are typically assertive have things to back that up. And not just, I say it and I believe it, right? They also have to really be open to feedback. Engineering leaders should want to be wrong. Because when they're wrong, that means a lot of times that someone else on their team who they're leading has come up with a better approach, has taken the things that they've instilled in them and kind of turned that back around on them, and now the student is now the teacher. So I think engineering leaders should want to see growth in the people that they're leading, which really manifests itself as being open to feedback from those you lead. So then we talk about, well, how does an engineer begin to lead? I can only speak for myself and from what I've observed. There's a lot of paths to get there. But if we take those kind of prerequisites that we talked about, right, about these types of things, the product mindset, being consumer focused, leading by example, if you're really kind of living and modeling those behaviors, then it really just takes a desire to improve your team and to serve the consumers of whatever you're working on. If you have that, and you start really reaching out to people on your team, saying, these are the things that we want to champion for our products, for our consumers, then you're going to find yourself starting to lead. True leaders, and this is true regardless of engineering or technology, a lot of people have heard this said before, true leaders don't say, okay, hi, I'm the leader, it's time to lead. They just start leading because they see a void and they say there needs, leadership and guidance is needed here, right? And so, things like politics and sports have taught us where, like, oh, a team needs a leader, and hierarchies need to exist because one person can only really lead X amount of direct people at a time, and that's, we've been taught that like those hierarchies exist. So yeah, I mean those things exist, but outside of that, people see voids for leadership where they have experience. Someone who is really strong in some technology but sees, people kind of muddling through that technology says, I see an opportunity for what I know to be useful to others so that I can lead them and kind of bring them up. So really it's about seeing the opportunities that our skills provide us. Which really brings us to this. Engineering leaders do need to have at least one of the two, a deep technical knowledge or deep business knowledge. So someone who is, maybe weak in a certain piece of tech and comes onto a team, but they have all the business knowledge for that from having worked on different portions of the business in the past, they can still lead, and then the rest of the team really leads them on the technology side. So that is to say, we're all engineering leaders in some regard. We just have to choose to believe it and choose to start wanting to improve our team and teach others. So there's an unfortunate way in which a lot of engineers begin to lead, and this was true for me in the beginning. That's leading by default, and what that means is, if you have those behaviors that we talked about, being consumer focused, and beyond that, focused on quality and excellence, and really wanting to do a good job. If you're that person and you don't see that in your teammates as much as you want, or as much as you think your product and consumers need, you're going to end up leading by default because you end up championing these things, and if no one else is championing it, then you really kind of organically start leading that charge. So if you find yourself in that situation, hopefully you don't, but then it's really kind of on you to work with your team members and start to express to them, these things are actually important, and so that you build a balanced team of leaders at all levels, right? Because the goal, at least in the model that we use here in the deck, and I honestly believe it elsewhere as well, is not that we have one singular person who's the leader who has ultimate accountability, right? It's that we have a team of accountable leaders who can all step in and provide the same level of guidance to new team members, and who don't necessarily need to get picked, handpicked to go to some meeting about, oh, what's the deal with this integration and architecture? It's like, well, so-and-so is the integration person, or so-and-so is the architect person. So we move away from that model, and we really try to start leading in all aspects of engineering so that everyone can lead together and lead the team as one. So then we talk about the bounds of engineering leadership. Obviously, you're not going to fire people. There's no personnel decisions. There's no whatever. It's rare that engineers report to other engineers. There are teams and companies where that does happen. When that does happen, though, it's, in the examples I've seen, it's not that these people work on the same products and same teams. It's that there's a designated engineering leader related to career growth who other engineers may report to. But it's not like, I'm on the team and you're my subservient people. It's career growth. It's just leadership through bringing them along their journey. So beyond that, what I would say is that for engineering leadership, it's really only those you choose to observe. If we talk about engineers being empowered and having this model where everyone is leading everyone, just at different levels on different topics, then, and no personnel decisions, then it's really up to you to take it as far as you want to take it, to model those behaviors that you want to see in your team and really carry those forward. So that is my very short version of what engineering and leadership is about, or leadership and engineering. Does anyone have any questions, any real specific items? Yeah.
Not taking I work with these kind of bosses, but there are bosses that don't want to move, they want you to do this on. Because for you, how do you approach situations like that where you're not specifically told to shut up and do your work and you just don't want to do it?
Right. So the question, if you couldn't hear it, was what happens when you're explicitly told not to lead? When someone who can make personnel decisions, it sounds like, in your example.
Your leader.
Yeah, your leaders from an HR role personnel perspective. What happens when they tell you not to lead? Well, then you have to establish, you can still lead. Because as we said, if we go back a few slides, leading starts with these things. And if you do these things, those behaviors are noticed by people on your team. And so whether you're, we talked about coercion earlier, so then you almost end up leading, by subterfuge because you are modeling these behaviors that others see and start to adopt because they see their value. You're not maybe outright saying, hey, let's do this, but you're kind of being that beacon of these values and seeing that those things can be adopted. I would hope that it's a very rare case that someone says, don't lead at all. I think there may be times when people say, when they establish more bounds of leadership for you, like, hey, we don't trust you to do this thing or whatever. But I think when that happens, those things need to be clearly stated why. And I think that's really just me speaking to this fictitious manager in this case, but really like, how does that person need to grow? Can they grow into a role where you would be comfortable with them leading? And if not, then I would suggest that engineer find another role, because then that person's not interested.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, I would think, to get a local answer for that.
Right.
It just came from a town hall. Similar question was posed to Alan Wheatley in several answers, but the final one was, if you're working for a leader who's not interested in your growth, find someone else.
Right.
So, you're being asked not to lead because this is outside of your competencies, or there's a stronger person, or perhaps a path has been decided on, and let's pursue that. Or if it's a lack of trust or a lack of respect, then maybe it's time, to align yourself with someone else.
Right, and in the example you gave where you mentioned that the decision's already been made, in that example I would just refer back to, if that decision's been made, then there should have been strong written and verbal communication to the team so that that's obvious and there's not team members kind of going in contrast to decisions that have already been made at that point. Any other questions? Yeah.
Have you had any experience, or when you talk about maybe trying to lead team members who maybe want to be told what to do, exactly what to do, and aren't used to maybe being empowered more to make those decisions?
Yeah, I dealt with that a lot in my early career at Humana. When we had new contractors come on from offshore that were just, frankly, two things. One, they were new to Humana overall, so they didn't understand. And two, they were a little new to the technology. So when you do that, you end up doing a lot of, in the beginning, you're going to have to do a lot of really direct coaching, a lot of really direct, getting people up to speed. If we think about pair programming, those first few days when someone comes onto a project, everyone just kind of says, okay, we need to get this person up to speed. So we spend a lot of that time getting them caught up with where we are in the project, what technologies we're using, and how we work. So, in those models, it's a similar process. You're going to get this person up to speed with, okay, here's the stuff we've got going on, and hopefully we have enough established patterns and enough kind of self-documenting code to give that person, I guess, the confidence to say, I can go forth and do these things. But if you find yourself in a situation where people are continuously afraid to kind of stick out, on their own and say, we need to do X, or the only way to accomplish this is to do this thing, and constantly look to you for appeal, then it's, again, I think that's not a person you want to keep around on your team. Yeah.
So, just kind of building up from his. I'm in a roadmap to become an architect. That's like what I want to do. And my leaders are really good at empowering me and telling me to grow. But then now there's this thing where I'm getting people to work with me, and they kind of want me to bring them up to speed, and eventually they will bring on the people. And I guess the part that I'm missing is, like, how do you scale up? Like, let's say you bring up a couple people, you bring them up to speed, you're working on one solution, and now you need to work on more solutions, and then they might need more people, and then it starts getting bigger, and you start moving farther up. Like, how do you scale up? I have a difficulty with it, because I feel like the more people that are on your team, the more communication happens, and the less work you can get done.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, when we look at the concept of the two pizza team, right? If you take two pizzas and you can still feed your team's kind of okay size. That's one metric, right? But that also kind of gets to the point that you're getting at of how many people can I reasonably communicate with? There's an exercise where, to illustrate this point, you shake hands with one person. Okay, fine. You bring in another person. Now you all have to shake hands. How many handshakes does that take? Then you bring in a fourth person. Then you start to see the number of handshakes really kind of, get out of control. So I think when it comes to a situation where you have a larger team, really what you're doing is kind of the train-the-trainer model that we say. The people that you empower in the beginning when the team is small, that, like we said, if we want everyone to be at kind of that equal leader level, when the team is small, you can achieve that. And then when you have to, like you said, maybe you have to move on as an architect and move out, and those people that you installed there, that you kind of brought along in the first place, those then are, hopefully you've done your job at that point, and you've elevated them to be those leaders who can provide you that cover and get that knowledge transfer across the rest of the team. But that kind of relies on the people who you seek to try to empower wanting to do that. So it really kind of speaks to be choosy on who you invest in the beginning. You want to invest in people who want to be invested in, and don't thrust people into responsibility that they don't want, because they're just going to execute poorly. Any other questions? Yeah.
What were some of the good resources in general for one who wants to either inspire or to be inspired in this idea of leadership and leading by example, being that consumer focused, or being just assertive? Like, hey, I'm not naturally assertive, but I would like to be that space. I see myself growing in that way. What were some resources maybe particularly for you that you found helpful in that mindset?
Yeah, so on the assertive front, unfortunately, I've never had any problem standing up and talking or whatever. My 5th grade band teacher told me to make a confident mistake, and ever since then that kind of stuck with me. So, but when it comes to product mindset and consumer focus, I think there's exercises and activities. One we're actually going to this afternoon. It's building empathy for members in poverty. So things like that. Look for those opportunities. There are groups in Humana that are putting these things on so that you can gain this consumer focus. Another way that I would say, on the consumer focus side is, for products in the deck, we do user research where every week we get people that come in and we actually interview them. And if you were here a couple weeks ago, you heard, maybe last week, Matt Dobson talked about that and how we record that user research. Sitting in on user research and watching people use your product when they don't know that you're watching them is incredibly enlightening, and it really helps you start to understand, oh wow, what does this mean? The example for me specifically on that was back in 2010, we were developing this application for internal people, and then they brought them in for training on it. I'm standing at the back of this training room, and then I see the software on 60 monitors that I've only ever seen on my personal workstation. And I see people like, the things I've learned to work around and the issues that have crept up in the code over time. I see people start to struggle with them, and I'm like, oh no, like what's happened, right? So like, just watching people use your products is incredibly enlightening. So any amount of user research you can do. As an example, a lot of times I'll have my wife look at stuff I'm working on and say, does this seem easy to you? Does this seem dumb? Whatever. Product mindset, a way to kind of get started with that is, if the thing you're working on now doesn't have explicitly defined product and business goals, and we can send out some examples of those, like for ones that we've done, just to give you like a level of fidelity that you should be after those, then start to look to define those. And then kind of, again, just start to re-anchor yourself to, is the thing we're doing about this? And as far as, all of these leadership qualities, right? Like I think these are not unique necessarily to engineering. So I don't have a great set of resources for them, but like I think, in general, there's a good set of those resources that are probably out there. Yeah.
So talk about leadership, and we think of that in terms of personal development, career growth. But 4 of the 6 items up here are really kind of being environmentally aware, being open to what you can learn from those around you or from just your environment, product you're working on, or your setting that you're in. And so being focused on yourself and developing your own strengths can bring on some blindness or narrow-mindedness. But audience, I'm a huge fan of audience analysis. Whether it's written communication or giving a talk like you are today, really product mindset. Who's going to use this? I need to understand. I'm sending this to the CEO, to the director. I'm sending it to a consumer because it changes the message in every way: content, language, organization.
Right. The decisions you make as a leader should always be informed by these things, because it's easy to make decisions, right? We do it all day, every day, whether we think about it or not. It's easy for us to just go, oh, this is bad, this is good, this is bad, this is good. We're sorting things like that in our mind subconsciously all the time. And so to have these things kind of front of mind really enables us to, I guess, to lead well, right? Because you don't need those things to lead, but you need them to lead well. I think so. Anything else?